Hi everyone, I'm going to do some lovely tulips today. So I've taken this photo from my garden. It always works best in odds. I am going to do 5, but 2 of them are going to be background tulips, so I don't need to draw those. So I've drawn out those 3 tulips and you can see them here. What I'll do is I'll pop the photo up big on screen and this bit up big on screen, so you can screenshot those and print them out if you want to. I'm on a Saunders Waterford book. It's the perfect size for the camera. So it's Saunders Waterford rough 12 by 9. Nice cotton paper. It's my preferred paper choice really. Okay, I have got a large wash brush, a round number 10, a round number 6 and a rigger. And I'm using some Daniel Smith's paints today. I'll go through the colours as I go. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to wet the paper, but avoiding those 3 tulips that I've drawn out. And we're going to get a bit of a base layer on. So take your time wetting the paper, make sure it's shiny and on all the places it needs to be. I love a vibrant red tulip. I'm going to use Pyrrole Scarlet today. Scarlet Lake would work. Even a Windsor Red if you're on Winsor & Newton, or a Cadmium Red Deep if you were on Cotman, would all work quite nicely. Could even use Permanent Rose or alizarin as a base. So I'm going to start with my round number 10. I'm just checking that I've got the water. You don't have to be absolutely up to the edge because you can just take the paint up, but you want to make sure you've got most of it covered. Okay, so I'm loading my brush up and I'm dipping into the colours as I go. So the first one that I'm starting with is a cerulean blue. I like this cerulean blue by Daniel Smith. It's really nice. It granulates, so it adds a bit more interest. I'm really thinking background colour at the minute with the Daniel Smith cerulean blue. Remember, you're coming around your main flowers. There's no particular stroke at this point, it's just getting a bit of a base on. I don't need that base everywhere. But I want something on. Rinse my brush out, dab it off, and then dip into clean water, and I'm going to come into the Pyrrole Scarlet. So now I'm thinking about the background flower. So I'm just going to get that in here. Remember, it will spread further. So wherever they are, you need to think about that and let it just spread and do its thing. And there's one here as well, just behind that one. Makes it easy when they're just behind another one, because you can just get that softness there. Okay, so this next colour is green gold. And I am basically painting that in onto the stems and the leaves and a little bit further. So you'll see that the directional stroke has changed and that I'm going up and down the leaves now. Leaves and stems. It does not matter if it goes further, you want it to do that. In fact, some of it can come up and through. Into the background areas as well. try not to get too much green and red blending together, because that will make a brown and it's a bit mucky looking. So you don't want that to happen. So that's the only thing you've got to be really conscious of. And if you're coming through, make sure it extends through. The colour doesn't stop down here, then go there. It needs to extend and flow through. And rinse my brush off, dip into the water again. So this one is Jaded Genuine, so it's a darker green, and I'm just going to run some of that through the leaves. It's just all about getting a nice bit of tone happening here and some movement. Can bring a little bit down the stems. Can go a bit further in places as well. So these are all Daniel Smith colours. And then this last one is a little bit of ultramarine blue. Just going to dip that in places. I don't want it to blend too much, so I'm letting the paint do its thing. That's the beauty of these paints, is you can do that. Just going to rinse my brush a little bit, dip into clean water. Just going to take a little bit of the ultramarine in places. Because I'm on a cotton paper, this gives me plenty of time to be able to do this. So I'm just going to take a little bit up there. Gives it a bit of a sky effect. Now, rinsing my brush off, drying it off, and I'm just going to blend this through here. So I've put two blobs on there that I don't like, and I need them to have a little bit more movement. So I've just done that. Okay, I'm going to dry that one off. Okay, so this is dried beautifully. You've got some lovely texture from the Jaded Genuine, some speckles within there, and the granulation within the cerulean blue. So the first thing that we're going to do is come on to the stems. So I'm going to wet a stem. This is with my round number 6, and then I'm going to come in with the green gold. So we're going to stick with the same colours. Try and get a nice edge on each bit of the stem. And then you want to dip into something darker. So I'm going to use the ultramarine blue in each of these cases and choose the direction of the light. So I'm going to keep the right side darker. You can see that cylindrical feel that I'm getting. Okay, I'm going to wet this one and wet that one. So we're going to do each of the stems. You can do one at a time if you're new to this. I'm quite practiced at doing this now, so I can do more than one. Then dip into the ultramarine blue. Make sure you've got a bit of water on your brush. It does need to flow. You can see that flowing along. Got the nice flow on the stems. You must always use clean water when you're doing flowers. I'm going to start to come into the inside of this flower. Now I've got a little bit of a yellow centre stamen and a little bit of an overlap. So I'm going to show you how I approach those. So I'm keeping the water with my round number 10 and the colour with my round number 6. So we're going to come in now. So I've left that bit dry at the top because that's a bit of a overlapping bit. And I've left this centre dry so that I can do that later with yellow. Just make sure you get the base of that colour all the way in. And then if I just keep a bit of this red here and take a little bit of the ultramarine blue into it, I'm going to get a nice shadow colour, which is going to work all the way through on the red. So I can bring some of that in towards the bottom. And what's quite nice as well is if you can stroke a couple of strokes upwards like that. Can even have a little bit just underneath that top edge for shadow. What you need to do now is flit around doing stems, doing petals. So I'm going to do a couple here and then let it dry before you come on to the ones next to them. So I'm letting the stems dry at the minute. So I can come on, this is all red. The bolder the red can be, the better. Then this one was with the other one that I wet. So this inside petal. Remember that dark colour for shadow can go into that centre area. Stroke it up a little bit. Okay, I'm just going to dry those off. Okay, so with around number 10, I'm going to load up with water and load up with the green gold and start to get some nice leaves in here. So I can come over there. It's that same principle keeps applying, that you're going to have to dry in between, but you can do a few before you have to do that. So I can do one behind here. And then with a little bit, I'm going to pick up some of the Jadeite green again. I can just stroke with a number 6 through some of these. So I'm trying to keep it where the dark originally was, so that I don't lose the light. You just want to make sure you get a really nice point on each of these. So you can see those 3 appearing. If I come in again, so I'm just going to do one here. Coming off. And one here. Then into that same Jadeite mix. A couple of the directional strokes. So what you start to get is a real sense of depth, because you can see what's happening behind as well. So you don't necessarily have to do all of these leaves. Bring this one in here. That one behind I'm going to leave, so that you start to get that sense of depth. I'm going to do a little one here. Again, the dark green. Coming in. Around number 6. Okay, I'm going to dry that off. Okay, so I've got one more with the green gold here. This is a fairly substantial one at the front. And then in with the dark green. Making sure that I create an edge there so they get the nice dark. I'm going to create a nice tip there as well for that leaf. So you can see how I'm starting to get that lovely depth appearing. Take a bit more of the dark into that one. Okay, make sure my brushes are both clean. I'm going to be going back into the water and the red now. So if I come on to this one with a little bit of water, and this one with a bit of water, and this one. So you can do these one at a time. It's just because I'm quite practiced at this that I can do more than one. In a way, I've become a petal production line. When you get more practiced, you can just do this. It's quite therapeutic doing flowers because you can do the same action over and over again. So this is taking the scarlet onto these petals. And then you want this darker mix for shadow. Don't skimp on it, so make sure you've got plenty. Follow the curve of the petal. You're popping the shadow in as well. Keeping it nice and directional. You can see them coming to life before your eyes. Again, drying off. Okay, so I've got a couple of inside bits, a couple of outside bits there, so I can do these ones. So I'm leaving those outside edges to show you how to do those when they fold over. Now we're coming on around number 6. Just going to bring this a little bit wider there. Okay, I need to make sure I've got plenty of the dark. Going to come in. With that directional stroke. They're really coming to life. You need that dark for them to work. Okay, I'm going to dry again. Okay, so this is coming on really nicely now. I'm going to start to finish off these petals. So I'm just taking on a little bit of water. I'm bringing the red. Tulips are some of my favourite flowers. They're just so pretty and so simple as well. Just come into the dark. So where it's coming over the stem, I'm just going to take a little bit of extra dark in there. And with that directional stroke, just there, and a bit of shadow on that one. And we're coming on to these ones. Now I want the colour to be a little bit lighter at the top. So if these have dried off a bit, it's perfect, because I'm going to show you what to do with that little lip. So you see how I've kept it a bit lighter there. Bring it stronger here, down that side. Then I'm going to clean my brush, dampen it off, dab it off really, and then I can just paint over and connect those together. So I don't want it to be as strong. I want that feeling that it's overlapping. Do the same with this bit. So you're just going to keep it nice and light. So those areas become nice and light, but then what you're going to do is dip into the neat red and just bring that on the outside edge. So it's still damp, it's got somewhere to flow, and it's giving you a much more subtle effect. So you can see that? It's really pretty. If it doesn't flow enough, then dab your brush off. Just take a tiny bit of water back in. Back into the dark. Just bring it down this edge. It doesn't need to go on those top edges. Go back into the red. Then I want you to just pop on a few directional strokes onto some of the drier ones. So it doesn't have to be everywhere. Just a few directional strokes. Vary the pressure of the brush. But that just helps give it a little bit more definition. With a damp brush then, so you can see I'm dabbing off on the kitchen towel. I can just touch in places just to spread that and soften it in. Okay, I'll dry those off. We're nearly done. Okay, so I've got a couple of little bits left that I want to do. So I'm going to take up a little bit of lemon yellow. So any lemon yellow will do the job, and you're going to pop that on to this centre. So that's just with a round number 6, and it's just giving you that little bit of lemon yellow. I'm going to pick up a little bit more of the red and just run that over the ones that weren't dry, so I couldn't do those directional strokes on them, because I do think it adds something to add those few directional strokes. Then the other thing I want to look at, because sometimes this happens and I think it's worth you noting this, is that the balance at the bottom isn't quite there, and the reason it isn't is because it's not dark enough here. So this side's got dark, this side's got dark, this one's sort of a little bit lost. So to fix that, I'm going to come back in and redo this leaf here. Sometimes it's just knowing where you've gone wrong. And then what I want is this, so that's a green gold, and I want to go much darker with the jadeite colour. So that gives it, you see that straight away, that balance is there. It needed that little bit of oomph at the bottom. Just going to soften that in there. And then what I'm going to do as well is take another one in here. So I'm going to make up one and bring it here. Then I can take a bit more dark in there. So that's the green gold. And the jadeite coming in and giving it that little bit more depth and balance. Often if you look at something and it's not right, it's because it hasn't got enough dark, and it's just making that a little bit darker. I'm going to take a little bit of the ultramarine into both of those as well. And then I'm going to come over this one here and do similar, because this needs a bit of something extra. So I'm just creating more balance. So that's the ultramarine, and a little bit of the jadeite going in there as well. Okay, so I shall dry this off and then find a mount. So there we go. So we've got a lovely tulip scene, a nice spring fresh tulip in a really nice vibrant red. So I've used Daniel Smith, but you could use other colours that are similar in a different paint brand and it would still work really nicely. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Please do like, subscribe and share. I'll pop you a playlist here and another video here, and I shall see you next time.